Isso em 2000. Meio de 2007, velho. Insana. Caraca, que insano. Agora que vai começar a putaria, então. Mentalidade dos caras, né, mano? Ah, isso que eles estão falando de game time, né? O 21 em game time, os caras estão falando. Se tu for pegar o in-game time do WR do God 1 agora, mano, acho que dá, sei lá, uns 20, 30 minutos. Essa categoria é qual a WR? Atualmente do GOT? Atualmente é 50. Deixa eu ver. 50 e poucos minutos. Não, não é Swimless não, cara. Ah, que 50 o quê? 1 hora e 7. 1 hora e 7. Não sei de onde que eu tirei 50.
Parts. The first video was up.
Voltaram da D? Voltaram, né? É, Real Time Attack no caso. Real Time Attack. Real Time Attack é em tempo real. Tipo, conta tempo da cutscene, conta tempo de tudo.
Up on game trailers on 16th of August. It was time to see whether he was just some random troll or the real deal. In his forum post, Satvara mentioned that the AGNC part of his run was rushed, as he was afraid he might have burnt out if he lingered there for too long. This does show in a few parts, where Kratos takes some unnecessary damage, for instance. Regardless, even from the start, Satvara's navigation was sharp and well handled. Notably, he optimized the various.
Não, depende do GOT. No caso do GOT, do God, eu acho que não. Mas se tu for pegar o DMC1 conta tempo em game time, as cutscenes.
Balancing beam and rope sections to a much higher degree compared to the previous runners. Satvara has said that he did his run in isolation, so to speak. He hadn't seen any other speedruns of God of War prior to starting his own run, and especially at the start of the game, this resulted in some suboptimal tactics. His small Hydra heads fight was a clear step backwards compared to Ball of Snow, with Kratos being pulled all around the area again. The extra magic orb chest was also left unutilized. Satvara was unaware of the combo to keep the big Hydra stun-locked, which slowed down the boss fight a little.
Ele foi bem mais
On the
arriscado
plus
nessa
side,
run.
he used a new tactic where you could prevent the boss from regaining health after a minigame if you grabbed it at a very precise time. This effectively
Olha lá o
skipped one
esquema,
of its
Big. Olha lá teu
phases.
esquema, Big. Olha lá, olha lá, olha lá.
Unlike any runner before or after, Satvara skipped the sex minigame.
Qual
Today,
DMC?
Kratos had no time for frivolities like that.
Nossa, ele foi bem arriscado nessa run. Sem pegar orb
Abstinence
nenhuma.
wasn't the only innovative new tactic Kratos had up his sleeve. The fight with 3 Cyclops at the gates of Athens was practically skipped, thanks to the use of clever positioning and the yawning chasm to the left.
Olha lá, vai derrubar os dois juntos. Bloggers, hein?
A basic tactic to jump higher than intended, a high jump, was already known back in 2006. But Satvara had discovered a way to make it more effective by using Poseidon's Rage at the top of the jump. This enabled a lot of shortcuts, both big and small, around the run. Although Satvara had no upgrades so far, Medusa was dealt with fairly effectively with juggling and keeping her cornered so that Poseidon's Rage could always do maximum damage. The real run-changing trick came right afterwards. It was possible to escape the room using a high jump and some seam walking. This was significant because the game was currently in the middle of the Medusa's Gaze tutorial. Kratos was expected to freeze and shatter nearby enemies, and the game gave him infinitely regenerating magic for this purpose. Now, if you left without completing the tutorial, you'd get to keep the regenerating magic for the rest of the game. Thanks to this trick, there was no longer a need to get Phoenix Feathers. No longer a need to manage your usually finite magic resource. Combat difficulty too became trivial, all at once. Another small platforming shortcut. The entire climbing wall section at Gates of Athens was skipped with a precise double jump, saving almost half a minute.
Cabrunco! Essa eu não sabia.
One of the best things about someone planning a speed
Olha que da hora.
At Gates of Athens was skipped with a precise double jump,
Caralho,
saving almost
mano.
half a
Da hora
minute.
isso aí, da hora, da hora.
One of the best things about someone
filho, da
planning
hora
a speedrun in a
aquele ali.
vacuum is that their run will look
Vou
much more
fazer.
original compared to someone who just adapts their tactics from someone
Ah,
else.
Big, os caras vai chiar, Big, porque você tá, sei lá, esquipando uma parte que não é da natureza do jogo esquipar. Você tá esquipando uma parte que um jogador casual nunca faria isso. Ó, o Dogote.
Look, the bed double jump. The entire climbing wall section at Gates of
Ó, ele
Athens
pula aqui na quininha dessa plataforma.
was skipped with a
Pula 2 vezes.
precise
Aí acho que tem alguma plataforma invisível aqui por causa da estátua. E aí ele consegue pular mais 2
double
vezes
jump,
depois.
saving almost half a minute. One of the best things about someone planning a speedrun in a vacuum is that their run will look much more original compared to someone who just adapts their tactics from someone else.
Aí tava sem a
Even Satvara's
ombrada.
quick rolling had a somewhat unique look to it. He usually chose his rolling angle carefully and did sequences of quick rolls without interrupting the cooldown anyway at the end, resulting in navigation that looked premeditated if angular. Satvara had discovered a way to do a longer jump than intended by using Blade's air attacks in the middle of Kratos' double jump.
Ele vai.
This allowed him to get on the higher
Nossa!
platform at Athens town square early, entirely skipping rooftops of
Nossa,
Athens, as well as getting Zeus's fury.
Caralho, mano. Mano, olha!
Longer jump than
Olha o que os caras conseguem imaginar pra fazer,
intended by
velho.
using
Eu nunca pensaria nisso, velho.
Blade's air attacks in the middle
Pular na bordinha da
of
plataforma,
Kratos' double
pular
jump.
pra trás,
This allowed
estender o pulo
him to
e
get on
cortar
the
todo o
higher
caminho
platform
da
at
fase ali,
Athens
velho.
town square early, entirely skipping rooftops of Athens,
Nossa.
as well as getting Zeus's fury. One of the
Caralho.
biggest skips in the entire run, saving over 10 minutes.
Numa run very hard, enfim. Numa run very hard é bom pra... Hoje não sei, né? Mas quando eu fazia, eu upava as Blade pro nível 5 pra pegar a magia infinita no raid. Upava o Poseidon, Medusa até o nível 2 e o Army of Hades até o nível 3, se desse. Mas agora eu não sei como é que é.
At the Temple of the Oracle, no orb farming happened. Also, Satvara used a different tactic for getting quickly past the beams on the upper floor.
Qual que é a dificuldade? É que assim, cada dificuldade muda, né, mano? Tipo, no Very Hard você tem que upar tudo isso daí. Pelo menos era. E no Easy você upa, sei lá, a Blade pra dar a rolada, o Poseidon até o 3 e o Zeus até o... O Zeus não. E o Hades até o 2.
Despite traversing more ground, his movement was so nimble that he made it through a few seconds faster than Ball of Snow.
Não gostei desse Mechanics não. O meu é melhor.
Fighting
O meu Mechanics é
Silence
melhor.
was easy with Poseidon
O meu Mechanics é melhor, viu? O meu é melhor. Queria falar nada não, mas o meu é
level
melhor.
2 and regenerating magic. Most of the fights from here on were just spamming Poseidon's Rage or Medusa's Gaze with endless magic until the enemies were no more. Kratos could now skip the underground rope fighting section that had given so much trouble
Vai pular
to
por
Prism.
trás, será?
To do this, you just needed to do a long jump from the rope at a correct
Nah.
height.
Nah.
Another
Caraca,
fairly big
velho.
skip was
Nah.
to do this, you just needed to do a long jump from
Nossa.
the rope at a
Eu não sabia
correct
dessa
height.
não. Cabrunco, filho.
Another fairly big skip was used
Eu
right
achei que ele ia passar por trás nas plataformas que tem ali na corda, igual eu fiz
at the ground
um
rope
vídeo uma
fighting
vez,
section
mano.
that had given so much trouble to Prism. To do this, you
Eu achei que o cara ia passar por trás da corda nas plataformas que tem aqui, mano.
just needed to do a long jump from
Nossa.
the rope at a correct height.
Nossa, um gênio, cara.
Another fairly big
Sabo
skip
muito.
was used right at the start of Challenge of Hades. High jumping to the upper floor allowed you to entirely skip fighting the centaurs and going through the maze, saving about 4 minutes.
Nossa, ele esquipou com as Blade, mano.
For the archer
Esquipar
rope
com a
path,
Artemis, isso daí já
Satvara
passa
used
mal,
a
imagina
very
com a Blade.
straightforward approach. Instead of fighting the Minotaurs and the
ele vai usar o
Archers,
Rage
he
aí.
used Rage of the Gods to
Rage.
go through most of the way, while being immune to arrows that would normally drop Kratos to his doom. The Blades of Hades platforming section was streamlined with a well-timed double jump.
Nossa, ele vai fazer aquele meu esquema, Big! Olha lá! Nossa, velho! Mano, os bagulhos já eram usados desde 2007, mano! Cabruco! Caraca, não foi o único então! Me sinto orgulhoso! Caraca, velho! Mas não criou nada não, os caras já era... Ó, sabo muito, filho, sabo muito! Os caras já era sabo muito, velho.
Satvara skipped a short in-game cutscene by rolling through it during loading time. This trick would be weaponized and called Blackout Glitch many years later in 2012. I was surprised to see an early example of it in this run already. The boss itself was dealt with by endlessly spamming Poseidon's Rage level 3. The trick to skip one of the phases of the boss fight was also used. The fight was now about as fast as it could get in these conditions,
agora tá com magia
at least without the
infinita,
discovery of new exploits. In his run comments, Satvara said that his run was an experiment. Perhaps because of this outlook, his segmenting was very informal.
Isso que era uma run de teste que o cara tava
he
fazendo.
simply saved every time while passing near a save point, resulting in a large number of segments, some of which were very short. The most egregious example was this segment, where he only picks up a key item before saving again. Cliffs of Madness had a few small but notable shortcuts with long and high jumps. At the rotating bridge section, whereas previous runners had used Zeus's Fury or Army of Hades to get up a key item before saving again. Cliffs of Madness had a few small...
Onde que é essa parte? Não é ali que pega o colar vermelho?
But notable shortcuts with long and high jumps. At the rotating bridge section, whereas previous runners had used Zeus's Fury or Army of Hades to get rid of the pestering archers, Satvara used Rage of the Gods to ignore their arrows. He remarked this was a mistake in the Ultimate God of War Union forum thread, as he hadn't realized Army of Hades would have also done the trick. There was also one bigger skip where Satvara skipped getting one of the two amulets that were normally used to fully extend this bridge. Another several minute time save.
É, pede. É porque, assim... É que é 2007, né, mano? É muito antigo pra achar essas coisas que os caras... Essas runs desses caras, velho. É muito difícil, porque eu acho que não tem no YouTube. Eu acho, né? Não sei. Essa run desse cara que tá no YouTube. Eu acho que tá só no site do fórum dos caras, sei lá. Não sei. Ou tá no YouTube, sei lá. Mas é muito difícil de achar, cara. Porque se tu jogar God of War 1 speedrun no YouTube, vai aparecer um monte de coisa e o vídeo do cara vai lá pro quinto dos infernos.
A small part of the
E outra, 2007, recém tinha saído o YouTube. O YouTube é de 2005 ou 2006, cara.
Architect's Tomb was skipped with a high jump. So many shortcuts that added up. Satvara skipped a big brawl on the conveyor belts before reaching Pandora's box by going around the fight trigger. This trick was found in 2006 already, but it seems Satvara had also discovered it by himself. Army of Hades level 2 and Poseidon's Rage level 3.
Já existia aquele glitch, mas o cara acabou encontrando ele também, sem querer.
Dealing with the Hades satyrs fairly effectively. Casting Army of Hades before entering the fight was a nice detail that was only really a good idea if you had regenerating magic.
Já usou Hades
the
antes de
final
entrar
skip
na batalha.
In the run was right before fighting Ares. One epic brawl inside the ruined temple of the Oracle could be by fighting Ares. One epic brawl inside the
Ele skipou muito mais rápido do que é hoje em dia, hein? Os cabos hoje em dia, pelo que eu tinha visto na live do Mártir, né? Os caras, eles sobem aqui e... eles ficam pendurados, aí sobe e depois pula. O cara, ele já pula direto.
Oracle could be bypassed by jumping over the fight trigger.
Posso tá falando merda, mas depois eu vejo.
As for Ares, Satvara didn't have any rage, and his blades were fairly low level anyway.
Tava num
So
fórum,
he whipped
pede.
out the long neglected blade of Artemis and actually did some damage with it. The combination of Army of Hades level 2 and the blade attacks was fairly effective, although his fight still ended up slower than Ball of Snows.
Era no fórum, pede. Era no fórum de
Satvara
God.
upgraded Army of Hades to level 3 right before the clones. Maxed out Army of Hades and Poseidon's Rage did short work of these foes. And that was God of War completed in 1:21 in-game time, done in 39 segments. It was definitely a very innovative run, with its numerous tactics that no one else had even dreamt of before.
1:21 in game
Region
time.
magic and the other glitch tactics fundamentally changed how people would run God of War from there on. Truth be told, the analysis you saw just now with all the run excerpts shouldn't exist. After Satvara originally uploaded his run, it stayed online for less than 2 weeks. The videos were taken down at the start of September, and no more than some hundreds of people ever got to see them. The tactics in the run were passed on by Satvara in a separate series of YouTube videos that he uploaded towards the end of the year. But as for the run itself, it was never re-uploaded. Until now, that is.
Fuçando, pescador, fuçando muito.
Put the run back online for
Eu
this
sei como é,
documentary,
fuçando
so
muito.
kudos for that. The response to these new tricks at Speed Demo's archive was slightly mixed. The rules of the website at the time disallowed going out of bounds, so it was contested whether something like region magic was allowed in speedruns, and if it was, would it be a separate category altogether? While this discussion was ongoing, plenty of new developments were happening on the glitching front. A poster called KevBev63 had heard of the miracles Satvara had performed, but unable to see the run for himself since it was just recently taken down, had no choice.
Deixa eu pausar aqui pra vocês quiserem ler, que eu vou ler também. Aí, tô falando dos vídeos do Satvara, dos exploit glitch, né? Ah, ele tá falando dos vídeos do Kaba que foi deletado do YouTube.
But to improvise.
Não, ainda tem essa, né? Além do bagulho ser de lá de 2007, ainda foi deletado do YouTube, cara.
He found some useful alternatives and additions to existing skips.
É por isso que aquele cara, é por isso que o Satvara, na primeira run de teste que a gente tava vendo ali dele, ele tava fazendo vários saves diferentes pra ir fazendo o mais rápido possível. Tá?
Exists. In the process, he found some useful alternatives and additions to existing skips.
Ah, aqui é onde ele descobriu o grid de magia infinita que usa até hoje.
After noticing how Kratos' secondary...
Você assistiu esse vídeo, Big? Esse não é um vídeo cabrunco, filho.
...weapon Blade of Artemis could be used in high jumps.
Ah lá, e descobriram como usar Artemis agora.
God Mode God also joined the Speed Demos archive forum and started talking about tactics. I personally also uploaded my first God of War glitch video around this time, and as time would tell, it wouldn't be the last. All this is to say that in the late 2007 and 2008, God of War was breaking at a rapid pace.
O Akan é velha guarda também.
Despite all this activity, for a while no new runners stepped up to claim the world record. People asked Ball of Snow to do another run incorporating the new tricks, but he said he neither had the time or the motivation that he had when doing his original run. KevBev63 did a segmented mock run with the final time 2:06, but he refrained from doing a more serious run, believing others would be more suited for it. And as for Satvara, he continued finding new skips all throughout 2008, but didn't make a new run to obsolete his old one or Ball of Snows for that matter. In March 2008, Speed Demos archive updated their rules, allowing out of bounds to be used in runs. Sadly, by this time it seemed as if all interest had waned among the runners. Well, except one. A runner called Shen Minyu, who had previously run God of War 2, made a segmented God mode speedrun and published it.
ADzinho. Nossa, já foi meia hora de vídeo. Caramba, vídeo bom, mano. Vídeo bom. Caralho, já é 1 da manhã. Isso é louco. Eu sei. Deixa eu ver quantas pessoas estão assistindo. 26. Se continuar 26, até o fim desse vídeo, a gente vê a parte 2 também. Ah, bronco, fi. Nossa, Big, muito louco saber que a gente descobre umas coisas novas, né? E depois você vê que já era usado há muito tempo, cara. Há muito tempo. Vou ver então a parte 2. Caraca, velho. Já voltaram do AD aí? Primeira run de God 1 que eu fiz foi em 2016? Foi 2016. Minha primeira run de God também foi no Very Hard. Também foi no Very Hard, só que sem glitch.
On YouTube in April 2008. His final time was 1:05:11, over 15 minutes faster than Satvara's run and 1 hour 15 minutes faster than the standing God mode record by Ball of Snow. Unlike Prism, Ball of Snow and Satvara, Shen Minyu used checkpoint retries to revert back the in-game timer if he did any grievous mistakes, then edited out the restarts from the final video. This allowed him to play much more fast and loose with platforming obstacles and other dangerous spots. Being able to play this risky, not to get into the regenerating magic exploits, meant that it wasn't necessary to get health or magic upgrades for Kratos any longer, even on God mode, streamlining the route a fair bit. Shen Minyu's early game was overall...
Esquece, eu ia falar alguma coisa, mas esquece. É que ele tava no Very Hard e não pegou upgrade, né? Mas como ele tava com magia infinita, então nem precisa.
All very similar to Ball of Snow, although his Hydra 2 luck was worse and beam jumping faster. I don't have much else to say about it, so I'll just skip over to Athens. One boss and sex minigame later, at the gates of Athens, Shen Minyu used an improved version of hurling all 3 Cyclops down the cliff, saving some extra seconds.
Ele foi igual o CJ empurrando o carro, menor. Ah, não, nem fudendo, cara. Nem fudendo, mano. Nem fudendo, velho. Ele empurrou andando, foda-se.
Without any upgrades, Shen Minyu resorted to Juggles and Poseidon's Rage to fight Medusa, much like Satvara had.
Foi empurrando o Ciclope só, mano.
Some extra seconds.
Olha lá, olha lá. Só foi empurrando, olha lá, olha lá. Olha lá. Ah, eu vou cair. Ai, ai, mano. Eu não sabia que dá pra empurrar eles sem... Eles estando normal, assim, parado.
Without any upgrades, Shen Minyu resorted to Juggles and Poseidon's Rage to fight Medusa, much like Satvara had. Shen Minyu focused on Blades of Chaos first, upgrading them to level 2 right after fighting Medusa.
Gosta nada, fim, aquilo é genial.
Shen Minyu used the newer version of the tutorial escape, which was both easier and faster than the old version. The regenerating magic exploit was here to stay.
Mano, é que esse pulo aqui não é muito difícil. Ele não mostrou a parte do skip dos arqueiros, né? Será que eles faziam os arqueiros lá no barco normal ainda? Porque aquele pulo com quadrado que eles fazem ali é frame perfeito. No PS2 é quase impossível de fazer. Nem sei se dá pra fazer no PS2.
Used the earliest known variation of the Gates of Athens skip to bypass several fights and a rope section. This trick was based on 2 obscure mechanical details. One was that if Kratos casts Poseidon's Rage on slippery floor collision, he can sometimes do a double jump afterwards, as if he was standing on normal ground, thus allowing the player to jump up slopes like this, as long as they had magic.
Como que ele conseguiu fazer isso? Aquela plataforma ali escorrega, velho. Como?
The second detail was that the various gates and doors do not necessarily exist if the camera is not centered on them, So in this instance, Shenminyu could get past a locked gate, since the camera was still in the wrong position after going up the slope. The real reason Shenminyu upgraded blades to level 2 first was to be able to do a newly discovered high jump technique called Apollo's high jump.
Na época
He
não,
used it to skip the entire Athens town square, as well as rooftops of Athens, immediately after arriving there, saving additional minutes over Satvara's old method. Definitely the biggest single sequence break in the early game, but like before, it came with the side effect of also skipping Zeus's fury. Not that it mattered too much. Being so overpowered due to regenerating magic, Shenminyu didn't have to stop to farm orbs by stoning harpies at the Temple of the Oracle.
Daí pulou reto.
Saving Oracle was streamlined with Apollo's high jump, since it was simply possible to hit the trigger which ended the section from underneath, instead of doing things like intended.
Dá pra salvar ela sem ativar? Nossa! Mano, isso eu não imaginava, velho. Isso é uma coisa que não, tipo, já me passou pela minha cabeça, só que eu achei que não daria. Porque eu achei que só dava pra salvar a Oráculo depois que você ativa o minigamezinho lá do tempo das paradinhas rodando, tá ligado? Eu não sabia que tinha como salvar ela sem precisar ativar. Fine Boom, mano. O que o cara fez ali, eu achei que ele ia tentar ativar, depois voltar e aí salvar ela. Mas ele salvou ela sem precisar ativar, mano. Da hora.
Another new early game sequence break was at the Desert of Lost Souls.
Caralho.
Shenminyu could skip fighting the 3 desert sirens by using this nifty collision flaw. As a side note, this was the first run that used the improved fast movement tactic called Roll Rush cancelled into Roll Rush. It was somewhat more challenging to perform than regular roll rush, since you had to keep your right arm positioned above the controller.
Nossa, esse skip eu vi uns dias atrás na live do Martin, velho.
This movement tactic is still used in God of War runs to this day. The fight against Sirens in the desert was Medusa's Gaze, which was most likely Shenminyu's best option, since he still hadn't upgraded.
No skip do deserto, Dodot? Ele fez um chute.
Fighting sequence break was at the Desert of Lost Souls. Shenminyu could
pula
skip
e usa aquele
fighting the
chute do
3
Kratos pra cair reto, ó.
by using this
Aí ele entra direto no chão.
Tactic than regular roll rush, since you had to analog stick R1 and X. This movement tactic is still used in God of War runs to this day. The fight against Sirens at the end of the desert was handled with Medusa's Gaze, which was most likely Shenminyu's best option, since he still hadn't upgraded anything except blades. Skipping continued upon reaching Pandora's temple. The fight at the yard was skipped by pushing Kratos through collision using the angle formed by this chest. Shenminyu was the first runner who used Blade of Artemis extensively, although perhaps not in a way the developers might have intended. This is because he used Blade of Artemis high jumps to skip most of Challenge of Atlas.
É muito difícil fazer não, pescador.
Around halfway into the game, Shenminyu still hasn't...
Vocês não têm ideia de como é fazer esse pulo aqui, ó. Vocês não têm ideia do como é difícil fazer essa merda desse pulo. Porque pro Kratos entrar na paredezinha ali, é um espaço muito pequeno e tem meio que uma parede visível em cima, cara. Então, ou o Kratos ele bate a cabeça e cai, não consegue entrar ali, ou você entra e o Kratos fica colado na parede, você pula e ele cai reto, cara. Nossa, é muito difícil acertar esse pulo aqui. Muito. Muito difícil. Depois vocês tentam fazer esse pulo aí, mano. É muito difícil de fazer, cara.
Since he has barely fought any enemies or opened any chests. Beside the orbs from the sex minigame, there's been a veritable drought of red orbs. In Challenge of Poseidon, Shenminyu proceeded to skip all fights with the combination of high jumps and collision flaws.
Which
The
daí já?
biggest skip was this swimming wall clip that allowed bypassing the entire second half of the challenge, more or less.
Mano, o mais difícil desse glitch aí é saber onde que você tá indo, porque você não
Around
vê nada
half
ali.
of challenge of Hades was also skipped using high jumps. After the balls of fire section, Shenminyu did one of the older variations of the challenge
Olha,
of
como eu queria
Hades
esquipar aí.
Archer rope skip, where he bypassed the rope altogether with a string of Blade of Artemis jumps.
Nossa, não sabia que dava pra esquipar por aí.
Shenminyu's unupgraded magic was barely enough to pull this trick off.
Eles faziam com o Poseidon, né? Esse pulo. Hoje em dia a gente faz... A gente não. Hoje em dia os caras fazem com a Medusa. Não usa mais o Poseidon.
Shenminyu upgraded Poseidon's Rage to level 2 just in time for Pandora's Guardian. His damage output was worse than either Bolus
Não vai usar
or
Artemis, porra.
Satmaras, but that couldn't really be helped with these orb routes.
Podia usar Artemis,
The
magia,
next major
Artemis,
sequence
magia.
break was at the Glyphs of Madness, where you could now skip getting both amulets with 2 Blade of Artemis jumps. The drawback to upgrading Poseidon's Rage was that it made any jump tactics using Poseidon's Rage slower, and also